Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, where we take up important articles of the day from the newspaper and discuss them in detail as per the demands of Civil Services exam. Articles covered today are displayed on your screen and their notes in PDF and Word format are provided in the description box down below. Without further ado, let us begin.
Now let us start our discussion with the first article of the day, and it appeared in page 11 of today's Hindu. Now recently, the French government has announced that the practice of wearing abaya would be banned in state-run schools, as it violated the principle of laïcité. Now this move has met with criticism by many, and it has been said that it brings another instance of laïcité being used as a tool of oppression rather than assimilation. Now the topic of secularism is important from GS paper 2 perspective, as it deals with Indian constitution and its significant provision. Further, GS paper 2 syllabus also mentions comparison of Indian constitutional scheme with that of other countries. Further, this topic is also important from mains perspective. As you can see, a question appeared in mains of the year 2018 on how the Indian concept of secularism is different from Western model of secularism. Further, secularism also appeared in the prelims of the year 2021, where a question appeared on exact constitutional status of India, which existed on 26th of January 1950. Now, before discussing what is laïcité, we will first understand what is the principle called secularism. Then, we will discuss the French derivative of secularism, which is also known as laïcité. And in this regard, we will compare French secularism with that of Indian secularism. Before ending today's discussion, we will discuss the comparison between Indian as well as Western model of secularism. Hence, let us start off our today's discussion by discussing what is secularism. Now, the idea of secularism, it seeks to achieve a secular society. And a secular society is the one which is without any interreligious or intra-religious domination. As this society, it makes religion a personal affair. Now, secularism, it follows three principles. The first principle in this regard is called separation principle, as there is a need to separate religious institutions and state institutions. Further, there needs to be no domination of religion in the public sphere. The second principle in this regard is called freedom principle. As in a secular society, there should be a freedom to practice one's faith or belief, and it should be done without harming others' belief. Additionally, there also need to be a freedom to change your personal belief or not to have any belief which is based on one's own conscience. Whereas the third important principle of secularism is that of equality, as this principle favors no advantage or disadvantage of having or not having any religious belief in the public sphere. Hence, you can say that secularism diminishes the influence of religious institutions and symbols in public lives. Hence, in a way, it can be said that secularism is a doctrine which commands distinct, independent, exclusive, as well as separate spheres of both state as well as religion. Hence, in this regard, there needs to be no overlapping between state as well as religion. Now, this means two things. First is that there should be no state interference in affairs of religion. Further, there should be no religious interference in affairs of the state. Now, after we have discussed what is secularism, let us discuss its French derivative, which is also known as laïcité. Now, laïcité, it was initially coined in the 19th century, and it can be understood as a formal separation between church and the state. As the concept of laïcité, it involves the complete removal of religious values from the public sphere, and it replaces religious values with that of secular values such as liberty, equality, as well as fraternity. Now, the underlying goal of laicite is to implement the provisions of tolerance as well as help assimilation of people. And as per this principle, the matters of religion, it needs to be confined to the public sphere. Hence, laicite, it envisages an important role of the state in ensuring that the affairs run according to the principle of laicite. Now, the idea of laicite, it emerged following the French Revolution in the year of 1789. However, this idea, it took a concrete shape in form of the law of 1905, and this is when the state-run secular schools were established in France. As the law of 1905, it guarantees freedom of conscience as well as it guarantees freedom of worship except when it clashes with the public order. Now, this law of 1905, it also states that the Republic of France will neither pay nor subsidize any form of worship. Hence, we can say that this principle, it separates the church and state in a strict sense. Now, after we have discussed the idea that is laicite, let us discuss the challenges that are faced in its implementation. Now, initially, the implementation of laicite was smooth as it was not seen as problematic for most part of 20th century. And this was because France in earlier part of 20th century, it was a homogeneous society. However, in 1950s and 60s, France witnessed a large-scale influx of immigrants who came from decolonized North Africa. And these population, they were predominantly from Muslim countries such as Tunisia, Morocco and Algeria. And this led to a large-scale change in demographics of French society. Now there are two questions that comes with implementation of laicite in French society. Now the first question, it pertains to the question of assimilation of people from diverse background in French society. Whereas the second section, they feel that France should let religious identities dissolve into a more diversified practices and identities as it will ensure integration. However, this integration, it also comes into conflict with original principle of laicite itself. Hence, in this regard, let us discuss how Indian secularism is more important in dealing with a heterogeneous society, that is Indian society. Now, Indian secularism, it does not envisage a strict separation between both religion as well as politics. As Indian state, it does not associate with any religion, whereas Indian state, it honors all faith in an equal manner. Also, Indian state, it permits freedom of practicing any religion and it takes into consideration the religious sentiments of Indian people. Now, the word secularism, it was not originally mentioned in the constitution. However, with 42nd Amendment Act of the year 1976, the word secular was added into the preamble of Indian constitution. Further, there are many provisions in the Indian constitution that highlight that Indian constitution in itself is a secular constitution. Now, the first important provision in this regard is the preamble of Indian constitution itself. As the preamble, it professes to secure all its citizens liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, as well as worship, in addition to guaranteeing equality of status and of opportunity to Indian citizens. Also, Indian Constitution has Article 14 and this article, it provides equality to all its citizens. Further, Article 15, it prohibits any discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. Also important is the Article 16, which provides equality of opportunity in matters of public employment irrespective of religion, race, as well as caste, sex, descent, place of birth, or residence, or any one of them. Additionally, Indian Constitution also provides for guaranteeing of freedom of religion to all persons in Article 25 to 28. Also, Article 29 and 30, they provide for exclusive rights to minorities, including religious minorities, in order to protect their interest. Further, Article 51A, it obligates all citizens to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood, in addition to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. Hence, we can say that Indian constitution is an secular constitution. Now, Indian secularism, it aims to achieve certain objectives. The first objective is to protect the religious freedom of all its citizens by making the state responsible for protection of religious freedom. Further, Indian secularism, it also avoids imposition of any particular religion from the state upon the rest of people. Additionally, Indian secularism, it also prohibits religious prosecution of individuals by ensuring that the state equally supports and protects all its citizens. Further, Indian secularism also prevents domination of one religion over another, as well as protects discrimination within the same religion. Hence, we can say that it avoids any form of discrimination in social, political, and economic spheres. Further, Indian secularism also favors developing tolerance rather than isolation from people having different religious faiths. Now, after we have discussed significant features of both French and Indian secularism, let us compare what are differences between Indian as well as Western notion of secularism. Now we can safely say that Indian model of secularism, it differs from the Western model of secularism. As unlike West, India sees no clear divide between religion as well as state. Now, in terms of nature of secularism, Indian secularism favors Sarv Dharm Sambhav, which means mutual respect for all religions. Additionally, Indian secularism, it also favors Dharm Nirpekshta, which means religious neutrality towards all religion. Whereas on the other hand, the nature of Western secularism is anti-religious. Now, in terms of scope of Indian secularism, state is seen as a critique and it can intervene in matters of religion when religion violates principle of equality or it causes communal disharmony. For example, Indian constitution explicitly bans the practice of untouchability as it goes against the principle of equality. Further, Indian constitution also prohibits religion-based gender discrimination and banning the principle of triple talaq is a step in this direction. Hence, Indian secularism, it promotes idea of equality as well as communal harmony. While on the other hand, Western form of secularism, it envisages no state interference. Hence, in terms of public sphere, religion as well as state, they are completely separated. Hence, this was all for today's discussion on Indian as well as Western secularism. Now, moving on to the next article of the day, which appeared in page 16 of today's Hindu newspaper. Now, this article is on CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies. And this article highlights that these CBDCs, they can make payments across borders more efficient. Now, the topic of CBDC is important from GS Paper 3 perspective, as it deals with inclusive growth and issues arising out of it. And these CBDCs, they will help in financial inclusion. Further, this topic is also important from mains perspective. As you can see, a question appeared in 2021 mains on cryptocurrency and its effect on Indian society. Further, the topic of CBDCs, it appeared in prelims of the year 2023 as well, where you can see it asked us to consider following statements regarding central bank digital currencies. Hence, in the scope of our today's discussion on central bank digital currency, we will first describe why is there a need for such CBDCs. Further, we will also discuss challenges that may arise in adoption of digital currencies in India, in addition to a suggestive way ahead so as to what measures are needed in order to adopt CBDCs in a more efficient and inclusive manner. Hence, let us start off our today's discussion by discussing why is there a need for CBDCs. Now the RBI, it defines CBDC as a legal tender which is issued by a central bank but in digital form. Now the Indian currency, that is rupee, it exists in physical form in terms of currency notes. However, RBI has further added CBDCs to it. As CBDC, they are pegged against our country's fiat currency, and it adds digital form to the existing physical form that are currency notes. Now there are many reasons which favors introduction of CBDC. The first is that there is a need to reduce cash management costs, as currently there are significant costs that are incurred in printing money as well as distribution of money all across the country. As in the year 2020 and 21, RBI spent more than 4900 crore rupees in cash distribution and physical cash management. Apart from this, there is significant environmental, social as well as governance costs that are associated with currency management. And CBDC, it helps reduces these operational costs such as printing money, their storage as well as their transportation. Another rationale for introduction of CBDC is to further the cause of digitization in the Indian economy, as it will help achieve the goal of less cash economy. As CBDC, they will further the cause of digital payment given they are easy to use as they come with sovereign guarantee which is provided by the central bank of our country. Further, CBDC will also help improve our cross-border transactions. As CBDC, they make these cross-border transactions more instantaneous, and it will help overcome key challenges that relates to time zones, exchange rate differences as well as regulatory requirements across multiple jurisdictions. Additionally, CBDC also favors financial inclusion, as there are many features that are related to CBDCs. For example, they offer offline functionality, they can be universally accessed across all devices as well as they are compatible with multiple devices, and these features they make financial services more accessible to underbanked and unbanked population who live in remote areas. Further, CBDC also safeguards the trust of common man in the national currency, and they are more secure when you compare them with private cryptocurrency. As currently there has been unabated use of cryptocurrencies, and which brings threat to our country's monetary policy objectives. Further, these private cryptocurrencies they are also volatile in nature, which makes them unreliable to use as a payment option. And in this regard, CBDC they can fulfill the demand for secured and a stable digital currency as it is currently backed by the central bank of our country. However, despite many important features, CBDC also has potential challenges that comes in between the adoption of digital currency all across the country. What are these challenges? Let us take a look in the next slide. The first challenge, which is associated with use of central bank digital currency, it relates to the potential cyber threats. As CBDC ecosystem, it faces similar risk of cyber attacks as the current payment system is exposed to. Further, with lower financial literacy levels in our country and the increase in digital payment related frauds, it may also spread to CBDCs. Further, there is also a threat to individual privacy, as use of cash is associated with anonymity, whereas with rise of digital payments, it leaves digital trails, and thereby it threatens the lawful or legitimate preference that are associated with cash use anonymity. Further, there are challenges that are associated with levels of technology preparedness. as currently India has a low level of technology adoption, and this may limit the reach of CBDCs, and it will further add to the existing inequalities that are there in terms of accessing financial products and services. Also, India will have a large number of elderly population in the coming future, and these population they're not really comfortable with the use of digital banking facilities. Further, CBDC also brings with it an impact on availability of bank credit. As with popularity of CBDCs, people may then begin withdrawing their money from their bank accounts. Hence, this will reduce the level of intermediation that is offered by banks currently, and it will further affect their ability to create credit. And this, in long term, will increase the cost of credit, which goes against the growth principle of our Indian economy. Further, there are also challenges that are associated with settling of cross border transactions, as without proper collaboration and common framework, the ability of policymakers to track cross border flows will be severely limited. Hence, now we have discussed challenges that are associated with use of central bank digital currencies. Let us take a look at suggestive way ahead so as to what needs to be done in order to make these central bank digital currencies more inclusive. Now, the first need to improve the implementation of CBDC framework is to have a robust regulatory framework in India. As before adopting this technology, there is a need for a flexible framework. As this flexible framework, it will incorporate dynamic learning in design of CBDCs. Further, there is a need to ensure high standards of cybersecurity, and there is a need to make parallel efforts in the field of financial literacy, as they are essential in dealing with CBDCs at an all India level. Further, there is a need to assure privacy of an individual, as it is essential to consider the way the privacy of an individual is respected. And the data which is associated with use of CBDC, it needs to be further protected. Also important in this regard is the BIS principles. As Bank of International Settlements, it has given a few principles that needs to be considered before implementation of a central bank digital currency. These include do no harm principle. As CBDCs, they should not interfere with public policy objectives. Further, they should not prevent banks from performing their monetary stability mandate. Additionally, there is also need for a coexistence principle. As CBDC, as they need to be used alongside and in complement with existing forms of money such as physical cash. Also, there is a need for innovation as well as efficiency. As CBDCs, they should promote innovation and competition, as this will increase the overall efficiency and accessibility of the country's payment system. Hence, with a robust regulatory framework, ensuring high standards for cybersecurity, and maintaining financial literacy in addition to privacy and following design principles will help make CBDCs more inclusive as well as increase their adoption in a wide scale manner. Hence, this was all for today's discussion on central bank digital currency. Now moving on to the next article of the day, which appeared in page 9 of today's Hindu newspaper. Now this article reports that out of 9.5 crore Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana households, almost 1.18 crore they brought no cylinder refills in the last financial year. While on the other hand, almost 1.5 crore households they just brought one cylinder refill. Now the topic of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana is important from GS paper 2 perspective, as it deals with government policies and interventions for development of various sectors and issues that are arising out of their design and implementation. Further, government schemes such as Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, it also appeared in the mains of the year 2016. Hence, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana is also important from mains perspective. Additionally, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, it found itself in the prelims of the year 2018. Hence, important government schemes, they are also important from prelims perspective. Hence, in the scope of our today's discussion on Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, we will first discuss the main features of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Then we will discuss its performance with respect to a CAG audit as well as the scope of today's article. Before concluding today's discussion, we will take a look at suggestive way forward as to what measures are needed in order to implement this scheme in a more equitable manner. Hence, let us start off our today's discussion by discussing what is a Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Now, the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, it was launched in the year of 2016. And this scheme, it was brought by Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. And this scheme, it intends to provide LPG connection to women of BPL households. However, in 2018, the scope of this scheme was expanded. As now women who fall under three categories, they have become eligible to achieve benefit under Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Now there are three categories of beneficiaries. The first, that the woman should be eligible as per the socio-economic caste census 2011 list. Further, a woman can also be a beneficiary of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Antyodaya Ann Yojana, or a beneficiary. She can be from scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, or most backward class communities, or can be a tea garden worker or an island dweller. Further, if a woman does not fall under either of these two categories, she is further eligible to achieve benefits under Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, and she can claim her benefits by providing a 14-point declaration in order to be a beneficiary. Also, this scheme provides a cash assistance of 1600 rupees. As this cash assistance, it covers security deposit for cylinder, pressure regulator, LPG hose, domestic gas consumer card, inspection, installation and demonstration charges. Additionally, all Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana beneficiaries, they are provided with first LPG refill as well as gas stove free of cost, along with their deposit free connection by the oil marketing companies. Further, consumers under PMUY, they are also given an option to purchase gas stove and refills on an easy monthly installment with zero interest. And this EMI will be recovered through LPG subsidy which is provided to the beneficiaries. However, many studies such as that of CAG report as well as RTI application, they have highlighted that Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana has not been able to ensure sustained usage of LPG connection by poor family, and they alternatively have turned towards solid fuels. Hence, in this regard, let us discuss the performance of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Now, the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, it faces affordability challenges. As between January of the year 2018 and March of the year 2023, India has witnessed an 82% increase in the price of LPG cylinders. As in January 2018, the price of LPG cylinder was about 495 rupees, whereas in the year 2023, it has increased to 903 rupees. Hence, this has brought forward the affordability challenge with respect to LPG cylinders. Also, this increase in cost of LPG has made non-clean alternatives such as agriculture residue and firewood cheaper than subsidized LPG in many parts of the country. Also, the implementation of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, it faces certain leakages, as the identification of BPL household is based currently on socioeconomic caste census data. However, a CAG report, it has found cases of mismatch in names of beneficiaries and the SEC data. as there are differences of about 12.5 lakh beneficiaries. Also, the CAG data has found that 1.9 lakh connection has been released in names of men. Hence, this signifies a certain amount of leakages with respect to Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Additionally, there has been instances of lack of sustained use of LPG connections, as 1 in 9 beneficiaries, that is 1.18 crore people, they have not refilled their LPG cylinders in the past 1 year, whereas about 1.5 crore people, they have only refilled their LPG connection for the first time. Hence, this highlights that there has been lack of sustained use of LPG among the PMUY Yojana beneficiaries. Also, this scheme faces reliable access challenges. As distributors, they have a financial disincentive in focusing areas which have low demands and sporadic refills. And this, it results into poor services in remote areas. Also, India's bottling capacity, it is not sufficient to cater this sustained rise in demand. Hence, it brings with it access challenges with respect to LPG cylinders. Also important in this regard is significant behavior change challenges, as sustained use of LPG has been slow, and this is because people, they have preferences for food which are cooked in traditional chulhas. Hence, it brings with it several negative behavior challenges that are associated with use of LPG in the country. Also, there are other residential energy requirements in an Indian household, which includes preparation of cattle feed, water heating, etc. And these residential energy requirements, they are fulfilled currently by solid fuels such as agriculture waste as well as firewood, and hence this deters the use of LPG. Hence, after we have discussed the lack of performance in the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, let us discuss a suggestive way forward so as to what measures needs to be undertaken in order to better the implementation of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Now, the first suggestion in this regard is there is a need to address barriers which are associated with continued use of LPG, as there is a need to provide increased but a tapering level of subsidies. As the subsidy to begin with, they can be at high levels, and this high level of subsidy, it will encourage LPG adoption. However, this subsidy, it also needs to be tapered off in coming years. Further, addressing barriers can also include reduction of LPG consumption bill, as there is a need to increase the efficiency of LPG stoves by more than 10%. And this can be done by introducing mandatory standards and labeling for LPG stoves and expediting the market transformation to use of efficient stoves. Additionally, there is a need to improve delivery services of LPG cylinders, as there is a need to incentivize the distribution so that rural distribution can be increased. Further, there is also a need to bring public accountability for LPG distribution, and this can be done by making the performance of distributors and oil marketing companies publicly available. Further, there is a need to make subsidy regime of LPG more targeted, as the subsidy net of LPG currently it is very wide and covers about 85% of Indian LPG consumers. Hence, there is a room for improving the targeting of subsidy regime, and the savings that are result of this reduced subsidy, it can be channelized to provide financial support to poor beneficiaries. Also important in this regard is the need to tackle behavioral issues, as currently there is a need for a lot more research which is needed to understand behaviors and social cultural barriers which prevent LPG uptake. Further, context specific strategies it is needed to bring behavioral change in the Indian society. Hence, it will be crucial to make the effective use of LPG in rural areas. Hence, by addressing barriers that are associated with continued use, improving delivery services of LPG cylinders, making the subsidy regime more targeted, and tackling behavioral issues can help improve the implementation of Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Hence, this was all for today's discussion on Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana.